Florida 1983 cold case solved. Arrest shocks community. For 42 years, Marion Locke's house sat rotting beneath the Florida sun, its silence thicker than dust, its secrets sealed beneath warped floorboards. In the summer of 1983, the quiet librarian was found dead in her own home, a single stab wound ending a life no one seemed to understand. The case went cold, the evidence misplaced, the truth politely forgotten. Now Detective Rowan Hale stands where she fell, flashlight cutting through decades of neglect. What he uncovers will unravel not just a murder but the rot within those sworn to protect her. Some cases die with time. Others wait for someone stubborn enough to listen. The house had been silent for 42 years. Its windows filmed with grime, its porch split by the slow insistence of rot. In the humid air of rural Florida, time hung heavy, like something left unburied. Detective Rowan Hale pushed the warped door open, and the hinges protested, a dry, aching sound that seemed to echo through the decades. Dust motes drifted in the beam of his flashlight, floating like suspended guilt. The case file had been thin even then, but it still bore her name. Marion Locke, age 27, librarian, killed in the summer of 1983. The report called it unsolved homicide, but it felt more like abandonment. Marion's body had been found here in this house, her house, on the edge of Palmetto Creek. A single stab wound to the abdomen, no forced entry, no weapon recovered. Her neighbors described her as quiet, reserved, nice to everyone. That kind of language, the soft padding people put around the dead, it never said who she really was, only what they wished her to be after she was gone. Rowan crouched near the spot where the carpet had been torn away for evidence back in '83. The faint, darker circle in the subfloor still marked where her blood had soaked in. He had not been born when she died. Yet standing here, he could feel the old air pressing in, the weight of another man's failure. There was no sound except for the low hum of cicadas outside and the rasp of his gloves as he flipped through an old folder. Polaroids, brittle at the corners. The images bled under the fatting emulsion, her body near the bookshelf, a fallen photograph beside her. He stopped at the photograph. A young woman standing in front of the same house, sunlight catching her hair. Marion Locke, alive, smiling, unaware of the static future waiting to claim her. He studied the picture the way one studies an artifact, as if by looking long enough it might confess something. The room had no answers, only memory pretending to be silence. 2. Case reopens due to discovery of new crucial evidence. The evidence lab had called at 9:43 p.m., a tone of disbelief beneath the technician's voice. "We ran the old evidence through the new systems," she said. "Something came up." Rowan arrived the next morning. The lab was bright and sterile, its light too clean for the kind of ghosts it summoned. On the stainless table lay a sealed envelope, marked in aging ink, Exhibit C, necklace fragment, victim's bedroom. He remembered the mention of it in the file, a broken chain believed to be Marion's own. But now the fragment told a different story. Embedded in the clasp was a trace, microscopic, of foreign DNA. Male. No match in '83, but the national database had grown in 4 decades. The system found a hit. Relative match, the tech explained. Not the suspect himself, but a close familial line, brother, maybe father. The name appeared on the screen. Samuel Dyer, deceased 2002. Former sheriff's deputy, assigned to the Locke homicide investigation. The words landed with mechanical precision, but beneath them a ripple. Rowan felt it, a slow, internal recalibration. He asked for the chain to be retested twice. The results were identical. The department reopened the case under quiet authorization. No press release, no public acknowledgement, just a brief note filed in digital silence. Cold Case 83 FL 191 reopened for forensic re-examination. Later that evening, Rowan found himself staring at the old newspaper clipping again. Librarian found dead, police seek leads. The photo of Sheriff's Deputy Dyer stood beside the headline, his expression professional, detached. A man who had stood in this same house 42 years earlier, holding the same photograph, promising justice. Now, his DNA was tangled in her necklace. Rowan exhaled slowly, the realization settling like dust. Sometimes the past didn't rot, it waited. 3 investigator examines, past reports to identify overlooked details. The precinct archive smelled of mildew and neglect. Faded folders lined the shelves like tombstones, cases abandoned by time rather than reason. Rowan set the lock file down on the metal desk, its edges yellowed, its paper soft as old skin. He began reading from the beginning. June 17, 1983, initial discovery of body at 7:52 a.m. by neighbor Mrs. Carson. No signs of struggle. Possible domestic motive. Victim last seen at library 6:30 p.m. Previous romantic involvement. None confirmed. He turned the page. Photographs of the scene. Notes scribbled in the margins by Deputy Dyer himself, tight, deliberate handwriting. No forced entry, window latch intact, possible familiarity with killer. Rowan traced the words with his gloved finger. The phrasing was precise, clinical, but one entry stood out halfway down the page. Victim's personal effects, necklace chain recovered, clasp broken, believed accidental. He read it twice. Believed accidental, a conclusion made without testing, without question. The kind of certainty that comes not from evidence but from desire to close a file, to end the noise. In the back of the report, an unsigned statement caught his attention. A volunteer librarian had given it but never appeared in court. The name, Ellen Royce. She'd mentioned seeing a police cruiser parked near the Locke residence the night before the murder. Dyer's patrol unit was logged as off-duty that night. Rowan leaned back. The chain of oversight began to tighten around itself. He pulled another file, Dyer's internal record. Commendations, transfers, and eventual resignation in 1986. Nothing disciplinary. But between the lines, something pulsed. A pattern of closed cases, all involving female victims, all unresolved or dismissed. He found himself studying Dyer's personnel photo, the grainy black and white portrait of a man with steady eyes and a calm smile. There was no malice in it, only distance. The kind that comes from a life spent looking at other people's suffering until it stops meaning anything. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the silence. Rowan noted the missing statement from Ellen Royce, the broken necklace and Dyer's connection. He wrote one line in his notebook. The case didn't fail, it was buried. Outside, the rain began to fall, soft, rhythmic, almost apologetic. The past was starting to thaw. The reopening of Marion Locke's case stirred the still water of old names and forgotten faces. Files were pulled from the archives, witnesses traced through phone directories that had long turned to dust. The investigation widened, not through chaos but method, a deliberate excavation of memory. 3 names surfaced, each one with a faint connection to Marion, each one shadowed by time. The first was Ellen Royce, the volunteer librarian who had given the original statement. Now 72, she lived in a small assisted living facility outside Sarasota. When Rowan visited, she greeted him with the polite confusion of someone who had lived too long among ghosts. She was kind, Ellen said, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. Always stayed late, cataloging, reading. There was someone who used to come by after hours, a man in uniform. Deputy Dyer, Rowan asked. A pause, almost imperceptible. I don't know, she said. They argued once, about something small, but small things matter, don't they? Rowan noted the tremor in her voice. Not fear, but the fatigue of remembering. The second name was Harold Vance, the property owner who'd rented Marion her home. The original report listed him as cooperative, though his statement had been unusually brief. Now in his late 60s, Vance lived in a trailer outside Ocala. He agreed to talk. his eyes filmed by cataracts but his memory sharp in fragments. She wanted to move out, he said. Said someone was watching her, thought she was imagining things. I told the deputy who came by. He told me not to worry about it. Deputy Dyer. Yeah, him said he'd look into it. Guess he didn't. Rowan wrote each line carefully. The rhythm advances, words slow but sure. The third name came from deeper in the records, Patrick Locke, Marion's younger brother. He'd been 20 at the time, away at college. His alibi was never questioned. But when Rowan found him, now a retired electrician in Georgia, the man's voice cracked over the phone. They said she was quiet, Patrick murmured. She was. She had this fire. She'd been writing letters to someone in the department, I think. Said she was going to report them. She wouldn't tell me who. Rowan asked for the letters, but none were ever found. 3 suspects, 3 incomplete truths. Dyer's name hovered behind each like a watermark, never explicit, never absent. The evidence was no longer about finding who had reason to kill Marion Locke. It was about understanding who had the power to hide it. 5 clues emerged slowly, linking inconsistencies to emotional conflicts. By the 3rd week, the investigation had shifted from reconstruction to interpretation. Rowan spent his nights in the archives, headphones blocking the hum of the world outside. Each file he reopened felt like turning soil, searching for roots buried deep in negligence. He began to trace patterns in the reports, not what was said but what was omitted. Dyer's handwriting appeared in margins of unrelated files. Similar victims, similar language, no forced entry, no signs of struggle. All women who lived alone, all within his jurisdiction. It was not a pattern of impulse, but one of control. Among Marion's personal effects, the lab uncovered another anomaly. A library checkout slip dated 2 days before her death. On the back, written in ink, were the words, "He thinks it's over. It is." The handwriting matched Marion's journal entries from earlier that year. Rowan reread those entries, cataloged from the scene but never analyzed. They began ordinary lists of patrons, notes on books, but then they changed. Mentions of late visits, of pressure to stay silent, of something he took that wasn't his. He called Patrick Locke again. Did your sister ever mention who she was afraid of? A long silence. She said it was someone she couldn't accuse, Patrick said finally, someone who'd make it disappear. The air in Rowan's office felt heavy. He looked at the board on the wall, names, dates, photos, and realized that every thread led back to a single oversight. The deputy who had written the report collected the evidence and sealed the file. But it wasn't enough. Dyer was dead, buried with his secrets. Rowan needed something tangible, something that still carried the weight of truth. That night he revisited the evidence room. He opened the original box from 1983, each item sealed and numbered. When he lifted the Polaroid of the crime scene, something small fluttered loose, a page, yellowed and thin. A fragment of a written statement unsigned, the ink almost faded. He said he'd protect me. I didn't know from what. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, Marion Locke. The realization came not with shock but with quiet inevitability. She had known him, trusted him. The betrayal had not been sudden, it had been cultivated. The clues no longer whispered, they accused. 6. Unexpected twist reveals the least suspected person as killer. The DNA had told one truth, Dyer's connection. But when the lab reprocessed the blood trace on the necklace fragment, they found something else, a secondary partial profile, female, close genetic similarity to Dyer. A match appeared in state records. Catherine Dyer, his daughter, now 60, living under a different name in Gainesville. When Rowan met her, she carried the polite detachment of someone long accustomed to distance. Her hands were steady, her eyes unflinching. "My father, been dead for 20 years, she said. What could you possibly want from me?" He placed the photograph of the necklace on the table. "Your DNA was found alongside his." Her expression didn't shift. "Then the test is wrong." "It isn't," Rowan said. "You knew Marian Locke." A pause, a faint crack in her composure. "She was my teacher when I was 15. She helped me read again after I failed my exams. My father didn't like that, said she was filling my head with nonsense." "What happened, Catherine?" She exhaled a trembling breath. "He told me to stay away from her, said she was dangerous. I went there that night to tell her I was leaving for college early. She told me she was going to report him for what he'd done to others. I begged her not to, he'd lose everything. She wouldn't listen." Her voice fractured. "She grabbed my arm, I pushed her, she fell. The knife, it was hers, I didn't mean." The rest dissolved into silence. Rowan let the confession hang between them, heavy and irreversible. It was the smallest detail, the secondary DNA on the clasp, that had turned the case. Not coincidence, just persistence, the difference between guessing and knowing. When Catherine was led away, she didn't cry. She looked tired, almost relieved. The kind of relief that comes when a lie has finally outlived its purpose. 7 ends with moral reflection. Truth isn't always visible on surface. The report was filed under case resolved. Homicide by negligent intent. The system closed it with the same mechanical certainty it had once opened it. Numbers, timestamps, digital signatures. Rowan sat alone in the evidence room, staring at the sealed box marked 83 FL 191. He thought about Marian Locke, the quiet librarian who believed in order, in the sanctity of truth. He thought about Catherine Dyer, the frightened girl who carried her father's corruption like an inheritance, and about Samuel Dyer himself, who had built a career on silence. Justice had arrived, but not cleanly. It had taken decades, generations even, to circle back to a single human moment, a push, a plea, a misunderstanding steeped in fear. Outside, the Florida air pressed against the glass, humid and endless. The night insects murmured in rhythmic indifference. Rowan closed the file. The truth was out, but it felt incomplete, as if uncovering it had only deepened the absence it tried to fill. He left the building without ceremony. Behind him, the archive lights dimmed, the hum of the fluorescent bulbs fading into the dark. Time, he realized, doesn't forgive, it only records. And somewhere beneath the weight of 42 years, the silence of Marian Locke's house returned. Not peaceful, not angry, just quiet.